So, all right, warm welcome to everyone to the next edition of the Social Beat webinar. And a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Nikhil. Welcome, Nikhil.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Vikas. And thank you, everyone, once again for attending. I understand this is weird timing because of the all important address that's happening. So I want to, once again, thank everyone for taking the time out.
Absolutely. So, it's going to give a quick introduction as well. Nikhil is a content marketing professional with about 10 years of experience across industries. And in his previous avatar at Interactive Avenues, he led digital brand and content strategy for some of the most iconic brands. And we'll talk about some of those brands shortly. He currently leads media planning, social media, and content marketing for Uber India and South Asia. And he's responsible for building an authentic brand narrative and increasing positive sentiment for the brand across. And he's Economic Times Brand Equity Hot Young Marketer, as we can all see, and also Social Samosa 30 under 30, which is something that I shared with him. So warm welcome, Nikhil, and thanks once again for accepting to be with us today and sharing your thoughts.
It's my pleasure. I'm super excited. And thanks for the warm introduction. I don't think I deserve a lot of those words, but I'm going to take them nevertheless.
No, absolutely. I think look forward to it. So I think Nikhil will start off with a little bit about your journey and some of the milestones, right? You've worked with some amazing brands like Coke, Sprite, Sony. Will be great to understand how your agency experience was and how you worked with some of the best brands in the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I've had like a weird kind of a, how do I say, like an evolution. If I take a few more steps back, I come from an army family. My father was in the Indian Army. Grew up all across the country, and my father was an IITian, and my brother was an MBA. So my path was pretty much chosen that I'm going to be either an army guy or one of these standard MBA engineer combinations. I actually ended up almost going to that path. I started my career with Citibank for a while as an intern there. Then moved to KPMG as an internal auditor. Would you believe it? Like at the absolute other end of the stick. And I was just telling somebody the other day that in my stint there, I was once sent to a plant in Hisar, and I was in internal auditing, so I had to do like stock verification of cement bags.
Right.
86,512 by hand, and that's
Wow.
the day I realized I think probably not for me. Like full kudos to people who can do this. It's not an easy job. So I ended up moving to digital advertising after that. Joined Interactive Avenues, which at that time in May of 2010 was just I think about a 20-25 member small team in Delhi with offices in Delhi and a very small, almost like a satellite office in Bangalore as well. Um, had some really I think interesting journeys there. I actually interestingly applied for the role of a copywriter, and there was no vacancy. So they're like, "Hey, we've got something for servicing," and I was so desperate to get into advertising. I'm like, "I'm going to take anything right now."
Right.
So I took up servicing, handled some really I think just some of the brands that a person could ask for. I think IA was just the best breeding ground and one of the best individuals across the digital sphere in this country. Um, so yeah, grew from being an account executive to I spent 8 years in that agency, like exactly 8 years from May 2010 to May 2018. Uh, almost graduated as the AVP for servicing and strategy. In that time, kind of, of course, at the start, tried a lot of things, tried a lot of brands, but found my own in consumer durables and technology as one key segment. And also as I matured and as I grew in the ladder there, I thought FMCG is one thing that I really want to learn because FMCG makes marketers what they are, right? Like they're known to be the best pedigree and just the fundamental principles are amazing. So took on those two segments. Sony was actually one of my first brands that I ever worked on. Fantastic experience, like the way they've got just a great bunch of talent there. So much learning every day, and just the way the Japanese style of working is so like they're so planning heavy and they're so detail oriented. I think to be able to do that at honestly like 20 years of age to handle a brand like that was is really pivotal in me forming my journey forward. I think they taught a lot of discipline and a lot of eye for detail to me, and I have my clients to thank for that, and I will be forever grateful, I think. Yeah,
Is
then
there a specific campaign that comes to mind, Nikhil? I'm sure there are many of them.
there are too many
But
to
anything
count.
specific that comes to mind when you think about Sony or Coke or any of the brands that you actively worked with
So
back in the day?
yeah, I think one of the specific ones during Sony was I used to handle this category. So whoever is, I think, 25 years and less won't even know that this category existed. But they used to manufacture a product called the Handycam. I'm sure you would remember, Vikas.
Yes, yeah, the
Before we
whole
had
hold the cam, yeah.
before we had mobile phones. Yeah, so I used to do Handycam, and just to see, like, in less than 10 years how the category is completely changed. But I used to have a lot of fun on that because I learned a lot. I was never a good photographer or a videographer, so I learned a lot about the trade, and just to see how uh, your competition was not just with other camcorders um, or handycam kind of brands, but also with mobile phones that were coming in, also with like small point and shoot cameras.
Yeah,
And I learned the art of search with handycam. I think like the amount of detail we used to go into in terms of people's preferences, people's just the way they used to write things. Want a camera for family, want a camera for shooting mountains, right? Like things like that. So the horizon was extremely broad. So that's something that I love doing. Yeah, so from that I actually moved on to like I said, Sony kind of gave me the taste for consumer durables, and I loved technology, I loved screens, I loved everything around tech at that time. So came an opportunity when Micromax was on a pitch. um, Ended up I still remember we got the pitch for, I think, a microsite. We won the pitch for a microsite, and my boss came in and he's like, hey, we got to make a microsite in 4 days. And I was running short on my, as a servicing person, I was running short on my revenue for that month. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to take it. I spent 4 days in office over a
right.
Saturday, Sunday, gave that microsite. And from that account grew from, like a couple of lakhs worth of microsite to when we exited, we were like, I think about a 30 crore brand spending on digital. Um, had the time of my life, great clients, great brand, homegrown, um, very innovative, very cheeky. So that was like my playing ground. I could get away with a lot of things because the brand and the managers there wanted to do something different.
Yeah, and it was a new brand. I think they had the playing ground, like they had the field open for them to do whatever they wanted, I
Absolutely.
guess. Yeah.
And actually, that's a great segue to our talk today,
Yeah.
which is so Micromax actually taught me how to unpack stories for the first time ever. Uh, because of course, when I was 20 years old, Sony definitely did not trust me with building the narrative, and rightly so, they shouldn't. But
Yeah.
Micromax, I think, kind of put that trust in the young blood, so as to say, because they were a young brand, um, and their line was nothing like anything, which essentially meant innovation, right? It meant that the brand is nothing like anything that you've ever seen before, and that from that line, I think the unpacking of storytelling and the importance of going deeper than just the function, I think, kind of got ingrained in me. So full props to that. My clients there were amazing. And then so did Micromax, then became like the self-confessed mobile phone expert in the agency. Handled Gioni for a while. Then moved to kind of FMCG. Worked on Coke and RB as two brands for a fairly long time. Coke was my hallmark. Handled the brand for a good amount, I think, for a larger amount of like 4 to 5 years.
Right.
Uh, we started with digital media specifically. We were like the media partners for the whole portfolio, including Coke, Sprite, Thumbs Up, Maza, Minute Maid, um, and even some local brands. Like they have a lot of regional brands apart from the national ones.
Yeah.
And then soon enough, we kind of started pitching content and creative and social. So I was like the key Spock for content, social, and communication there after a while. And I did a lot of media anyway on the side. So um, yeah, then my client from Coke moved to Uber, and she gave me a shout. So and I hadn't ever worked at a client side. I didn't think it was in me to uh, go to a brand. Like there is a certain culture about an agency. There's just a certain madness around an agency which I've always enjoyed. But I think when the offer from Uber came in, Uber's a once in a generation company. Honestly, we like to call it that,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
pretty much changed the world. It's hard to imagine that like less than 6 years ago, this brand didn't exist in a country like India, and today
It's
it's
synonymous with mobility. Yeah,
exactly
absolutely.
right. It's the Xerox of mobility.
Yeah.
So I thought that a brand which is touching so many lives every day, which has literally changed the face of mobility, has given wings to so many dreams. I thought that's an opportunity I did not want to miss, and I wanted to come along for the ride, if I may. So came in as the head of social and content for Uber. Took on Uber Eats as well after a few months. Uh, of course, we don't have Uber Eats anymore in India. Um, and then very recently, kind of took on an expanded mandate of media buying and planning as well. So kind of uh, right now exercising both my left and right brains equally. But it's a lot of fun. It's been a great evolution. It's been a great journey for the last 10 years. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, that's great to hear. I think Nikhil's story before we get into our brand story and sort of how we can get to that. So I think, which is a great segue into, Nikhil, let's talk a bit about what makes a great story, right? And I think you've helped brands from the scratch in terms of building their brand story and also looked at evolved brands like Uber and said, okay, if this is where you are right now, how do I take it to an Indian context? How do I take it forward from here to, next 4, 5, 6, 10 years? So be great to understand from your point of view what makes a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think stories in themselves are universal, right? Like, uh, if I take an analogy of say a fairy tale, a child sitting in India connects with Cinderella as much as a child sitting in Uganda, as much as a child sitting in the US. So I think stories in their own in their concepts are very universal. I think the way you unpack them with context is key. So when you think of Coke, you ask a person in Australia, in India, in Philippines, hell in Antarctica, they'll say happiness. And there's a reason why everybody understands that Coke is equal to happiness, because for the last 100+ years, they've been hammering that that one thing again and again, and they've always stood for that. So for me, I think one is that stories themselves are universal, but I think the way you unpack them in a context which is more regional and relative to your local things. Second, I think though the execution in itself is important, right? Like you can't take a story and just run with it without really understanding what the deeper meaning is. And for me, that the word I use is purpose. So
Right.
and this is honestly, I think, a very loosely thrown word right now, especially in the current times where millennials are the key target segment for pretty much every brand, and everybody's saying purpose, purpose, purpose. But I think at least what I've seen is people confuse causes with purpose. Uh, if I'm say donating to charity, that's a cause. But what is my purpose in life is very different. In fact, I was on a session yesterday with my agency, just kind of talking to their interns about pretty much the same thing, and one of them reached out and said that as a brand, do I have to have a cause? What about brands like Colgate? Who technically don't really, at the offset, don't really seem like they have a story to tell except for function. But I think the way you unpeel them and understand that their purpose is to say give dental hygiene to the world, and that's why they do, their
Yeah.
Indian Medical Association certify, they do checkup camps, they do community camps and stuff like that. So for me, I think purpose is literally the bedrock of everything, and purpose is equal to personality. I usually treat brands like people, and that's really
Right.
helped me, personify that story. So if Uber was a person, what would that person be? Or if Coke was a person, what would that person be? Who would that person be? And that's a trick that we learned while in our agency growing up days. I'm sure you do that a lot with your folks as well. When you're writing a brief, the
Yeah.
pen shade that you write for your TG, I have the brand in my mind when I'm writing that, and it's very easy to then kind of visualize what you want to do with them, what stories would move that person. So for me, that's, I think, another way that I look at that. And three is that you have to have, as a brand, there is a space that you own where you have the right to play and the right to win. uh, just because, say, the world is talking about a certain thing doesn't mean you jump in and talk about that same thing, even though it has nothing to do with your brand or your
So
brand's
the
personality.
relevance is key to those aspects. Yeah.
Absolutely. Relevance is absolutely, I think, for me, a huge factor in which, I look at stories. You don't want to be tokenist, right? A lot of brands have learned it the hard way, including some mega brands.
Right.
At the risk of, these are out in the public domain, so I can talk about them. But if you go back a few years, Pepsi did a campaign, not because I used to handle Coke, so I'm dissing on Pepsi. That's not what I'm trying to do. But if you go back a few years, there was an ad with, I think, Kylie Jenner and Pepsi. Sorry, Kendall Jenner and Pepsi. So I've got my wife as my teleprompter here, so she'll keep coming in. But they did a campaign about protests and how a protest was stopped because of somebody drinking Pepsi, and this was around the US was going through a lot of turmoil around student protests, around minority protests, and just absolutely raw relevance, right? Like, and that just blew up in their faces. I think so. You have to be a little sensitive about where your brand really plays a role. You just really can't put your brand in the middle of anything that's happening. So for me, yeah, those are few principles that I follow when I'm looking at that. And then and my current boss, Sanjay, he has a really cool line that I live by. It's called acts, not ads. Very simple, but if you stories are done through acts and not ads, right? Like, I'm not gonna say, hey, here, buy my mobile phone, and that's the story. That's not the story. I think you have to really put your money where your mouth is, do things which actually make a difference, and whatever little that difference may be, but you got to do something before you can start talking about it, I feel.
You need to live it
acts,
up
not
before
ads.
you can,
Yes, so acts, not ads is something that that I live by.
No, that's fascinating, Nikhil. So would you want to unpeel what are the campaigns you did, and also talk a bit about, if, like you were saying, if Uber was a person, what would that person be, or even any other brand that you want to take up, and sort of unpeel and say, okay, how did you transform that personality, that brand sort of ethos into an actual execution of a campaign?
Got it. So essentially, Uber's philosophy worldwide, or our holding line, if you may call it, if our philosophy, whatever you may call it, is so our mission statement is that we ignite opportunity by setting the world in motion. And that's quite beautiful, right? If anybody asks you which is the single most important invention in the history of mankind, it's the wheel, because it set things in motion. It was able to get us from point A to point B faster than ever before, goods from point A to point B faster than ever before, built economies, built bloody civilization in the way we know today. So I feel Uber has such an important role. You don't realize it when you don't have context, but the moment I thought about it, that holy shit, like, it's the wheel that set the world in motion.
And you're taking the wheel forward in some sense.
Yes. So that's what Uber really stands for. About, if we can get people and goods and things from point A to point B in a more efficient, in a more economic manner, things can change. And an example of that would be, say, a country like Saudi Arabia, right? Where again, I'm sorry if it ruffles some feathers, but I'm a little too open about things like that. But like a country like Saudi Arabia, which did not allow women to drive till literally 3 years back in 2018. I think, they said okay to women for driving. Imagine the kind of change that a brand like Uber got there, where a woman wasn't now suddenly dependent on the man of the house to take her, to whatever she wanted to do, whether she wanted to upskill herself, whether she wanted to go meet friends, or just whatever, or family or relatives. So things like that, I think, got me really excited about the potential of just that mission. And our line is move forward, which essentially means that if you keep moving, the world will move forward. And that's pretty much, and it's super universal, right? You think about it, the restriction in movement is across the world. It's the same everywhere. There are people who can't afford it somewhere. There's just not enough opportunities in somewhere. But the fact that there is a brand which can help you move without really caring, and Travis, who was the founder of Uber, his line was that I want to make transportation as reliable as running water, which really talks to you about how important it is, how important the mission is, and how kind of, like, what kind of an impact it can make to the world. A few years back, if I had to go from one part of the city to the other, I'd be losing my sleep because I'd have to pay $2,000, or shift 3 buses, or reach in like the absolute tattered condition. But now I don't really care about it. Now I'm just thinking what I want to do when I get there. The mindset's completely changed. I don't think how to get there. I think, what do I do when I get there? So that's, I think, the large context of the Uber story. Of course, we've tried to do a lot of things around unpacking that in the India context. We had the Badhte Chale campaign, which was pretty much just a Hindi version of Move
Moving
Forward.
forward,
But
yeah.
under that, we've done a whole lot of things. I think the way we've unpacked Move Forward in this country is quite interesting, or at least we're trying to. We're a brand that is not afraid to speak its mind. We're a brand uh, that is for everyone as well, right? We have a product from an Uber XL, or from a premium perspective, all the way down to Uber Moto, which is for your short term commute and a short mile commute and stuff like that, and Uber Auto and Uber Go, Uber Pool.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not the safest product right now, of course, but
Yeah.
but things like that. We have something for everything, right? And to answer your question, and I think a lot of you will laugh when I say this, but I used to have a lot of debate with who is Uber. Like, if I give you one name, who is Uber? And this is not official, of course. This is not with my head of brand, but this is just a couple of us just bantering with each other on an agency brainstorm. And I think we came to a conclusion that that Uber is like Shah Rukh Khan, right? It's that self-made, changed the world, is for everyone, right? You may
Right.
be, what they say, a mass consumer. You still love Shah Rukh, and you may be a super premium consumer, only wearing Gucci's and Louis Vuittons of the world. You still have the same love and respect for that person.
Absolutely.
So
Unless you actually hate Shah Rukh Khan, which there might be some people in the audience, but no,
you may
absolutely makes a lot
love
of
him,
sense.
but he is what it is, right? He
You
moves.
can't ignore him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we
No, but
netted that
that's a
may not
great
be
point. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's a great point. And I think, I actually remember when Uber was launched in India, a lot of it was actually around luxury cars. And I think the first few weeks or months was actually you most likely were to get a luxury car. And I think that was the appeal when it first came in. But I
Absolutely.
think, like you rightly said, it's evolved over time to a point where now you also have Uber Auto, you also have Moto, you have basically anyone and everyone who can relate to the brand, connect to the brand. How do you carry that brand forward to such a large sort of spectrum, right? Because that's often a challenge with many people and many brands that we speak to as well.
So Uber's a democratizer, right? Like we've tried to democratize the way people move, and you're right when you say that when we started with luxury, we kind of course, came to a more mass kind of an offering. Um, but I think it all starts with the audience and the and the person you want to impact, right? Like that consumer is everybody, is everything. So that's where it starts from. And being a digital product, I think the one thing we have going for us is the power of data, and is the power of segmentation that we have. We understand consumers from a very, very interesting and a very intimate perspective as well, right? uh, FMCG goes through that. Like the FMCG has spent centuries just trying to figure out who the hell is buying them. Like, who the hell is
Right.
that person who's picking my product up from the shelf? Which is not the case with a tech brand, and whatever tech brand that may be. So I think that really is an added. It's almost like a bonus advantage that you go in with, because I can understand who is the auto consumer, who's the motor consumer, who's the premier consumer. The way I unpack my stories for them is very, very different, right? So, for example, uh, recently what we've done is auto as a category is highly penetrated amongst women in India.
Yeah.
So our segment there was women, and it was a women targeted campaign. But we didn't say, hey, take an auto in under 30 rupees or whatever. The line we used was "Bade Radon ki choti savari," which is essentially, that's the way we're unpacking Move Forward, right? Because so many, our aim was to get women to work, and a lot of women on the panel here would agree to that a lot of their opportunities are stifled by distance from their house, or just by weird time, right? My wife also went through that when she's a fashion graduate, but couldn't take up a fashion job because it was in Noida and we stay in Delhi, and it would have been crazy
Right.
time, stuff like that. So the way we unpacked it for them was that these are your big dreams, and this is the little ride for your big dreams, and this is how you will move forward. Versus you switch to Moto, which is a more male dominated category, where our line was "Ho ja sapno par savar," because with Moto you could wiggle your way through traffic, or be
Get there faster. Yeah.
yeah, reach there faster, so you'll have more time to spend on yourself, the more time you can do to upskill yourself, and hence kind of be closer to their dreams. versus a premier thing, which is say crafted for your comfort, which is a completely different segmentation. We're not talking about what your experience is, what is your life's goal, but what your experience is going to be when you're in that, because you as a premium consumer wants a certain sense of premiumness. So I think it's that segmentation's really helped us unpacking a lot of our content. And of course, you're a digital agency, I'm a digital guy. The power of digital is
data-driven creativity to some extent. Yeah.
Targeting. I can reach Nikhil with the exact correct communication versus a Vikas who is going to be, I'm sure, ready to pay $100 extra for his ride. So I think just
I think makes sense. I think and Uber probably has a lot of data as well, right? And I think that's probably in some ways unique to you guys, because not all brands out there may have the quality of data that you may have on users, which can really fuel a lot of this.
It's also about how you use that data, right? How you unpack that data. Data in its
pure form is not
just numbers. They don't tell a story. But when you really unpack or try and understand how powerful that data can be. Like I did a campaign last year around ratings, around, so Uber, as in Uber, you rate your driver and your driver rates you as well.
Yeah.
The whole campaign was, our attempt at kind of creating a better rider-driver relationship, because India, how we treat drivers, right? It's just not the best way, because they come from a different strata of society or whatever that may be. It's just the treatment meted out is very, very, in my opinion, very wrong.
Yeah.
So we said that, hey, how can we make people understand the importance of having a better relationship? We said, okay, let's try with Uber ratings, because, well, in India, everybody's competitive. If I tell you my Uber rating, you will be ready to tell me yours if it's better, or hide in the corner if it's
worse. Ingrained in the Indian student to go after higher marks. Yeah.
So we took that, and how do you get better ratings is just by being a better person to the driver, right? Like the driver rates you.
Yeah.
So there we use the power of data to really create a very fun campaign. We actually showed how the average rating of a Delhi person is actually better than a Bombay person, which is completely unheard of, right?
Right.
Or the data showed us that if you took a ride at 3:03 a.m., your chances of getting a 5-star ride are higher. Or people named Amit, I think Amit, Rahul, and Abhishek, like those guys are rated the highest. Like that story, right? Like that's fun data presented in a manner which you'll be like, oh, that's interesting, that's cute, and then probably that'll stick with you for I think slightly
for a long time. Yeah.
Then me just telling you, please driver ke saath achhe se behave karna.
Right.
I think that's just the broad difference in how you use data.
No, absolutely. And I think you touched upon another important point, is that in your ecosystem and also with many other startups, you also have your partner ecosystem that's equally important to kind of engage, right? And I think we've seen this even with the Swiggies and Zomatos and even other industries where they have a whole bunch of partners. And I think that storytelling also entails how do you communicate with those partners, right? You also want to touch upon some of that, because the campaign you spoke about is still focused towards consumers, but brought in the partners in a different way. But you've also done a lot of other campaigns which tell that story to partners itself. Absolutely. So it would be great to hear that.
So when you say partners, I'm guessing you mean drivers,
Driver
right?
partners, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So okay, first of all, if I just tell you, I'm pretty sure understand that, and a lot of people here would understand that, but unfortunately, a lot of people in India don't really get it, that that brands like Uber or even Zomato or Swiggy, they're marketplaces, right? And what is a marketplace? Where the supplier and the buyer both are our customers.
Yeah.
So it's not like as Uber only Vikas is important. Nikhil, a driver, is also equally, if not more important than Vikas, because the demand exists. It's usually the supply which is the problem, right? That's the general rule of the marketplace. So for us, we actually have an internal pillar called driver at heart, and every single person, whether they're the lowest person in or the newest person in Uber or the oldest person in Uber, the CEO to a trainee, everybody lives by that rule, that we have drivers at heart, because we are what we are because of the drivers. So for us, yes, they're very, very important, extremely important, sometimes to a fault. And you're right, we've done a lot of not just kind of marketing campaigns, but we also do a lot of actual things, like I said, acts, not ads, to kind of help them, right? So we actually have this thing called Uber Care, which is which is a program started by the ops teams, and of course marketing is deeply ingrained in that, is where we provide a host of benefits to our drivers, to the driver partners, ranging from micro loans, because they don't need 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, they need 5,000 to buy say a fridge, or 8,000 to pay their child's fee. And all of us know loan sharks, right? People from this strata don't get loans easily, and if they do, they're paying interest from their nose. So we help them get micro loans at just like even like lower than bank interest rates. We've in fact worked with driver partners to help them and their children get admissions in school under the under the RTE Act, where private schools are supposed to have seats reserved for people from a certain economic background.
Right.
But these guys didn't even know that. They didn't even know how to fill the form, right? And it's difficult. It's a difficult process. So we've had over, I think, 500, 600 children get admission.
Fabulous, right?
Yeah, we run a program called Kifayat, which if people are not comfortable with Hindi, Kifayat literally means saving. There we've partnered with spare part manufacturers, insurance guys, servicing workshops, and we're providing a lot of discounted stuff for their cars or their autos. And you need to understand, like their cars are going through much more wear and tear than yours or mine. So they have to replace brake pads every 2 months. Unlike, I don't even know when I've replaced my brake pad on my car. So it's a very huge expense for them. So we're able to get that in like better things. But from a marketing and storytelling perspective, we started a social campaign a while back called Uber Star. And this actually generated from when I was actually interviewing for the job, and this is something that I saw, that everybody just comes and hates on drivers. It's so easy for people to come and say, hey, my driver was this, my driver was that, he did this, he did that, he didn't switch on the AC, he cancelled, blah, blah, blah. And as a service brand, yes, you deal with a lot of hatred. You will always deal with a lot of hatred because it's easier for you to come and say bad things. But it's very difficult for you to come and say, hey, I had a ride which was
things,
and this guy talked so well, or this guy did this, or this guy did that. So we started this program called Uber Star, which was essentially to say that if you had a great, memorable experience, please come and share it with us, and we will ensure that we reach out to the drivers and give them your words of appreciation. So, and this wasn't just a social campaign just to kind of have, say, conversations about it. What we did was we created a kit which had a letter which was signed by a senior leadership member from Uber, had a t-shirt which said Uber Star, had a badge which said Uber Star, had a car dangler which said Uber Star. We actually even created headrest covers, like the headrest that you have. And at the back of the
Uber Star,
at the back of the headrest cover, it said you're riding with an Uber Star. So that the next rider, when they come in, they ask, what is an Uber Star? Why are you an Uber Star? Or blah, blah, blah. And we used to call them over to the office and make a whole event about it. So imagine every week we were doing this, and drivers crave, like they want to feel like they're a part of
it,
right? They belong and they're important. So just the act of them, having a photo taken with a certificate being given with a senior member of the team, just goes a long way in helping them feel a little better about themselves every day. So we used to do that and take those stories out. We've done a few films also. One of my favorites is actually from Chennai. We have this driver partner called PV Raji Ashok. She is a auto driver. So first of all, when I heard, oh my God, I didn't even know female auto drivers existed in India, right? I was so ignorant.
Very few, I guess. So
yeah. And I found out about her, and I'm like, oh my God, she is like, pardon my French, she's badass. She's the highest rated Uber auto driver, man or woman or transgender in India. She's broken all boundaries. She was in fact honored by the former chief minister, honorary Jayalalitha ji, to be the best driver. She was actually voted the best driver in Chennai, the best auto driver in Chennai. So like, imagine those stories don't really see the light of
the day.
Everybody's talking about, hey, this guy cancelled me or didn't switch on the AC on time. So our attempt was to just bring those stories out and show people that, just because you sit in an Uber or any of other, like even competitors, it's not your, it's not your, like, it's just not your car, right? Like it's just somebody else's property. And I almost switched to Hindi and I realized I shouldn't be saying things like that. But you have to behave, right? When you come in, that the other person is also a human being. and you get what you give. I
It's
believe
not an entitlement to say, this is what it should be like, right?
all entitlement, unfortunately. And but yeah, just the fact if I can show you that, hey, here's a person who's earning an honest day's living by helping you reach on time, uh, and look at her story. She is winning it, killing it in a man's world. I think just goes a long way in creating slightly deeper relationships, where I could have easily just said that, hey, take an Uber auto for 29 rupees, but just the mindset completely changes, right, when you put out stories like this.
No, absolutely. I think very valid point. Now, shifting gears a little bit, Nikhil. So I think one of the things we've also noticed is when you have a lot of when you are a brand for many years for some time, and especially during crises like this, you need to adapt and change the persona to some extent, right? And you probably bring in some empathy, bring in some elements that are relevant at that time. But how do you do that while still keeping in mind the core essence of the brand, right? And I think you will be great to understand how do you adapt to changing times while still keeping that ethos and that core essence still in place.
Yeah. So I think a you know your personality is long term, right? And that won't change with the changing times. If you stand for something,
Yeah,
like for example, if I'm a music lover, I'll be a music lover for the rest of my life till I die.
yeah,
My music preferences might change from rock and roll to heavy metal to now unfortunately electronic music or Hindustani classical or whatever that may be. uh, so I think if you use that analogy and look at, again, a brand like Coke, which has been there for 100 years, 100 plus years, 130 years now, if they've stood for happiness, they've stood for happiness all across. But happiness in the 90s would have been you getting, a hot plate of samosas after a week of drudgery. Happiness today
yeah.
is you getting 57 likes on your Instagram picture. The the roads have changed, but the destination's pretty much the same, if you ask me. So
Huh.
I believe in that. So if you have a strong brand, and if you really captured the essence and the personality right, and you've got good brand managers who are ruthless at at holding those to heart, and living that every day, I think I don't think it matters what times you're in. But yeah, of course, the way the sensibilities change, the way you execute things change. You don't want to be irrelevant. You don't want to be insensitive to a lot of things. Even sensitivities have changed so much, right? Like how uh, the way you'd portray an advertisement in the 80s or the 70s would be very different from the way you'd portray it right now. But
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
the larger essence remains the same, that hey, this as a brand, I want to change X. Now that X could be whatever, but you'll unpack it differently in a different decade, in a different year. Say if my brand is move forward, it is about helping minorities move forward today. It's about helping LGBTQIA people get job opportunities tomorrow. They helping them move forward. It's about working with government and creating accessibilities in places where it didn't exist, and helping economies move forward. Um, but I can just kind of keep shifting gears whenever I want to in terms of the time and day. But the larger essence is still the same, right? It's still the same,
Huh.
that we want to ignite opportunity by setting the world in motion. Now that's our line.
And you keep changing and adapting. Makes a lot of sense. But you want to talk a bit about the campaign itself, Nikhil, because I think the campaign was different in many ways, also because it also seemed like crowdsourced content to some extent. I don't know the story
Yeah.
behind, but it'll be great to hear it. But it also had vertical videos, horizontal videos, which you don't often see from brands. Obviously, I think COVID has made all of us a lot more flexible.
Human beings
Uh,
are super adaptable, right? Aren't they?
yeah,
Like, I think after chameleons, human beings know how to change color the fastest. So
absolutely.
uh, yeah, so of course, if I just unpack safer for each other, our broad context, and I want to give a shout out to my agency on this. Sorry, Vikas, if it rubs you the wrong way. but
No, no, please go
but
ahead.
Densu Web Chutney is our agency, is our social creative agency, and now they're doing a lot of stuff for our brand as well. They when we brief them on safety, and what do we do to right now to help quell the fears that people have. And Uber is doing a lot in terms of, we provided PPE kits to our drivers. We're doing disinfection before every trip. Um, but how do we kind of take that story a little forward, um, and without kind of taking on this fear mongering approach, because we're a brand which believes in an optimistic future. We'll never be fear mongering. So they came out with a beautiful, I think, line or way. We've got a really good copywriter there. Her name is Binny. She's just amazing. And she said that just like the virus, safety can also spread from one person to the other. And that was the whole context around breaking the chain or making the chain, right? That you alone, and she used a line which has stuck with me and it'll probably be with me forever, is that in today's day and age, selfishness is the best form of selflessness. Because right now, if I'm selfish about being safe for myself, if I'm wearing a mask, if I'm washing my hands, if I'm hygienic, it impacts a whole lot of people. We've never been in such a day and age where it's so important for me to be selfish. So we took that as an insight and said that, hey, let us flip that around on its head. And a lot of people right now have fears about, if you're taking an Uber or any other ride sharing platform, you're concerned about the past rider. मुझसे पहले कौन आया होगा? I don't know, like, what will that person be? Were they safe or not? So we said, hey, why not just flip it on its head? So instead of us being cautious about the previous rider, why can't we be optimistic about the next one? Where we're saying, I'm going to take care of myself, and you please do that, so that the next one after you is safer as well. And because we're a marketplace, we believe it's a shared responsibility. It's not just the driver's job. It's not just Uber's job. It's your job as well to be safe and be responsible, citizens of the country. So that was the large context around with which we built it. But of course, with COVID, extremely difficult to produce content right now. I can't go out to shoot. Don't want to put our partners at risk as well, right? I don't want to tell my agency that go shoot when it's unsafe.
It's unsafe, yeah.
So we did pretty much, yes, crowdsource it. We reached out to riders, and the names that you see on the film are all real names, all real people. All of them have Instagram accounts, so you can check them. I haven't made them.
Act before you act. Right?
Absolutely, we're very sound, and we didn't release this ad or this film before we actually had PP distributed. People like drivers were trained and all of that. We could have done this a month back, right? We had the idea a while back, but we tried to ensure that we are acting before we're talking about it. So we did that. Yes, we crowdsourced, and that's the reason why you see one is in 16:9, one is in 9:16. Different modulations, different kind of settings in the background. Lighting is not perfect anywhere, but I think in today's day and age, people value authenticity over slickness and glamour. And I think that's the reason why this film's also cut through very well with a lot of people.
No, absolutely. And I think, that's a key takeaway, at least even what we've been telling a lot of brands, is that in today's age, it's the story and the content and the authenticity, like you rightly said, that matters.
Yeah.
The actual execution need not be as
absolutely
friendly for television or other mediums, but as long as it works. So
I agree. And look at what the world of Instagram or the world of YouTube or now the X world of TikTok has done to this country, right? Like the kind of content that's created is not your high budget things, right? It's people sitting in their bathroom, in their kitchen, in their bedroom, doing random things, and that with people
that works very well.
Yeah, you can. And one of the first comments that when I put out this film on my handles as well was that this is so relatable. I almost feel like I could be one of those people. I could be Pema, I could be Rukhsar, I could be Akshay or whoever. And I think that's what really worked for us, where it's very slice of life, and you want to be relatable. Gone are the days of those mega blockbuster stars and blockbuster channels and stuff like that. A brand needs to show what role it plays in your life,
and keeping it real. And I think that taking on some questions here, Nikhil, I think that's a question that Ria actually has, that a lot of micro videos and shorter storytelling is really trending right now. What are your suggestions there, or does it matter really whether the content is really long or not? And
if you ask me, I honestly, pardon my French, I don't give a shit about the length of the content anymore. It's also big, but you have to be a little smart because there are some platforms which are made for shorter content. So of course you'll not run a 1 minute on a platform, say like TikTok, or now I don't know if it's going to be Chingari or whatever is the next thing.
Or Mitro or whatever it is.
Yeah. But and it's also, this is a question a lot of us grapple with as marketers, and especially as digital guys, because everybody's like, तुमने ही बोला था कि 30 सेकंड के ad में there'll be a certain view through, and 1 minute में you'll have a certain view through, and stuff like that. But there's a difference between a commercial and content in my head. Of course, commercials are also content, but there's a difference between a commercial and, say, a brand story, or that piece of content. People don't want to watch commercials anymore, unless and until you're like, I used to love Fevicol ads, and I used to love Feviquick ads, and anything that came from Pidilite was just amazing, or Amul for that matter, or Dhara. But those times have gone, right? Like, there's no originality left in content anymore, honestly, if you ask me. But people don't want to watch commercials, so they you can't hold their attention for more than 10 seconds, 15 seconds anymore, because and we also have to remember that we're not living in the time of one Doordarshan and a family sitting in front of the TV watching Chitrahar together. Everybody has their own device, and they have a friend who's WhatsApping them, a girlfriend who's swiping right on Tinder, somebody who's written to them on their YouTube vlog that they've done. They have 30,000 things going on. They don't have time to commercial, right? So yes, from a commercial perspective, I usually say keep it simple, keep it short, and that is if you want to sell something. But if it's a story involved, I don't think
the length matters. Yeah,
matters. There's a reason why every single person in this country, or at least every single urban household who has access to a smart device, waits for the Game of Thrones release, even though I have to spend an hour and a half watching it, and then another 3 hours trying to bloody unpack and understand what the hell happened and why did they kill Ned Stark. But so, like, if it's a great story, you'll stick around. Honestly, you'll stick around for as long as the story holds your attention, right? And then there's also theory in that, right? There is an emotion, there's an arc of a film, there's an arc of content, how the emotion builds up, what's your peak, what's your penny drop moment, and from where the drop off happens. So there is science that goes behind it. It's not like I don't come out of it from my from my head just randomly.
And I often give an example of Lagan, right? I mean, Lagan was probably one of the longest movies made during its time, but you wouldn't feel it till the end, right? And I think
exactly. And you stuck around till that last moment when Hum Jeet Gaye was announced. And it really it made so much difference in your life. But you really didn't come out as thinking, and most of Ashutosh Gavarkar films are anyway super long. But you go in knowing that, because you're in a frame of mind also, right? If I show you a 3-minute film on YouTube, you probably might look at it. But if I show you 3-minute on Instagram, you'll be like, what the hell? This is not what I'm here for.
The channel matters, but
I think placement is also very important, but play it smart. You can have the same message being sent in 15 seconds versus 3 minutes, or take a person, show them a trailer and excite them, and take them to a longer article,
version,
video, whatever it is.
Perfect. Taking a few more questions. Yeah, thanks, Nikhil. A few more questions here. I think Soumya's question is, I think there's a lot of stuff happening on digital, and probably there's an overload in some sense. So her question is, how do you think brand managers can actually find a balance between staying relevant at this time, but at the same time keeping the brand afloat, right? You want to be active, but at the same time don't overload them. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, don't be irrelevant. I think don't be tokenist in your approach. Just because and it's a very important topic, of course, but so don't take me in the wrong way. This is sensitive, but just because the world is saying Black Lives Matter right now, don't just jump in with your brand, even though you've not done anything around minorities in your life. Then you're just being tokenist, and you're just trying. There used to be a term called wannabes, so you're being a wannabe right now. But if you do something about it, and if it's something that matters to you, then of course definitely talk about it. We need more voices in support of minorities anyway. So that's my one take, that don't try and fit yourself in everything. Find something, and that's the point. What does a trend mean? A trend means it'll be here today and gone tomorrow, and there'll be another trend that will come day after. So wait, hold your horses. Like, you don't have to have, like, this is and you run a social agency, Vikas, you'd know this, that any social media manager or even a brand has this tendency of, आज World Doctor Day, मुझे आज भी कुछ बोलना है, कल World Engineer Day, मुझे कल भी कुछ बोलना है, रक्षाबंधन पे भी कुछ बोलना है, and Happy New Year भी wish करना है, और गुड़ी पाड़वा, which I'm not even in Maharashtra, but I will still say something around it. that people see through that bullshit now. I think consumers are fairly well educated, well versed. Our good friends at Geo have penetrated digital a lot. People have access now. So I think don't lose uh, don't lose authenticity in the quest for relevance. That just never works.
No, valid, absolutely. Yash has a very interesting question. Which are some of the more powerful sentiments you are coming across when looking at the Indian audience? And any trends or any sentiments that you anticipate going forward in the next few months?
Yeah, so honestly, I think India is also becoming more and more global, right? So a lot of sentiments are similar, but yeah, you have to tread a little more cautiously in from an Indian perspective. There are emotions at play, and people hold emotions very very dearly in a place like India. So while you want to be authentic and you want to say your own thing, but the one thing in India I've seen is that don't don't go over the top in terms of almost dissing the other party, right? Don't Your opinion is your opinion, and it's not reality. So I think and that's something that Indians hold very very dear to their heart. That's one. The other I feel, and which is a very uniquely Indian thing, is that we love our brands. We love wearing our brands on our sleeves, and the moment a brand screws up, we're the first ones to say you've screwed up. Boycott TikTok, boycott Uber, boycott anything.
Yeah.
So uh, so so while you may make fun about it, or while you think it's trolling, but also see that that your brand affects the lives of people so much that they will take the pain of writing something for you. So I feel you have to have a balance between honesty and respect. You got to be respectful for other people's opinion as well. And as a brand, you have too much, unfortunately, just too much responsibility in India. uh, Brands like Amul, for example, they're a part of our lives now. If Amul does something wrong tomorrow, God save them. Like my mom will be on her head screaming her lungs out that how can Amul do this, right? Like, and that's how much importance uh, we have as brands and as marketers.
And that's how much love I think consumers give those brands as well, right? So
Yeah. So sorry, before you go to the next question, I just want to I saw this from Prarthana that she's written that they've written their LGBTQ community, and it feels good that a community is being considered these days. Prarthana, thank you for
calling it out. Yeah.
So courageous in calling it out here. It takes a whole lot of courage to say this on an open panel like this. So kudos to you first of all. And I personally have been extremely particular about trying to make a more inclusive society. Uber is an inclusive employer. We're a no discrimination employer. As a platform, we don't discriminate. So if you could be anybody from the spectrum, and you could find your come on Uber or come on Uber Eats as a platform if you want to deliver or drive or something. And we try. So I feel that as a marketer, it's my responsibility to normalize these things more and more, because we create pop culture. What an idea, Sergi, is one is used in conversations every day, for example. So we create pop culture, and hence it's important for us to normalize this. So even if you if you look at some of the campaigns, I just want to be shameless about it and say, but in 2019 I did a campaign on Valentine's Day, which was and you'd be like, why did Uber do something on Valentine's Day? That's so stupid. But the year before that, Section 377 was implemented. It meant that this was the first open Valentine's Day. Sorry, there's some disturbance, but yeah.
Yeah, muted it. Yeah.
So this was the first open Valentine's Day for all. So we celebrated that because we celebrate the community, because we have representation inside of us as well, right? We did rainbow roots on the app. So I don't know if you remember, if you opened the app, you'll see the roots.
See that, yeah.
Colors. Yeah, we did that in India as well. And it could have gone either way, right? Like there are people who are still, honestly, unfortunately, against this. So, but we didn't care, because this is something we believed in, and we're not rubbing somebody else the wrong way. This is important, and we want to celebrate it. Even now, if you look at, and this is something not a lot of people understand, but when I look at content, and my agency is also very supportive of this, and my other brand people, and including my boss, that as I don't know if you know Sapna Chadda. Sapna Chadda is a very senior marketer, and she had, Sapna is a senior marketer from Google, and she had once written that if you don't actively represent, then you passively exclude. And that stuck with me so much that I realized that, oh my God, all ads are just full of men and it's whitewashed.
Yeah.
So now I have a rule that whenever I'm making a film, has to be 60-40 representation in terms of females, has to have representation from every single part of this country, has to show religious representation, and has to show sexual orientation representation in some manner or the other. Without being, stereotypical about it, um, but trying to normalize this.
But
People need
normalizing that,
more
yeah.
women
No,
on
makes,
screen. People need to see more LGBTQIA community members on screen. Like even
yeah.
if you notice in the Safer for Each Other film, there is an old auntie, there are more females than men, there is a northeastern person, there is a Muslim person, and then if you notice, there's a girl called Mehek, which has the one with the yellow background. She's got a pride flag in her room. So that's our hat tip to to the LGBTQ community.
No,
We do
absolutely. Today, in fact, is
notice
the
it, but
last day of the
it's
Pride month, right? So,
yeah.
yeah. No, absolutely. Good call out, Pratna and Nikhil for shouting that out. I think we have time maybe for one last question, Nikhil. I think we have a question from Akansha, which is interesting on, she's part of the marketing of an eco-friendly FMCG brand. Her question is, how can a brand which is starting out now sort of build a brand in a low involvement purchase, right? Because it's probably a low ticket size item. How do you really build in the environment friendly piece into the brand story?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was just discussing something around low involvement products with a person just before this session. Um, so so while the purchase may be low involvement, but I think what you need to understand is what is your product benefit and what is your brand benefit in a consumer's life. So you're saying you're an eco-friendly FMCG brand, hence you're saving the world technically. Uh, so what does that mean for me? What does that mean for Nikhil? Are you telling Nikhil that, hey, you got to leave behind a better world for your children, or if it's around say pets, you want to leave a better world for animals, whatever it may be. I think you need to understand what your product benefit is and what your brand stands for in that sense. Um, and and it's difficult to cut through, but you have to find that one personality trait about yourself which will cut through. Uh, and it'll take some attempts. It will not happen overnight, of course. But it's not impossible as well, right? Like for example, look at Chayos. Chayos was a brand that came out of nowhere, a chai brand in a country where it's all just cafes, and look at what they've done. And very very strongly inherently Indian. Kulhad wali chai is now a trend. People are bloody taking selfies with that. And I remember
Yeah.
my mom used to shout at me to drink that, and I'd be like, "This is so uncool." And now suddenly it's the new cool. Uh, so you got to ride with the trends. You got to have the right messaging, but you have to find your product benefit. What is the benefit that I have? The role that I play in your life as a brand. Unless and until you have that sorted, it's not going to cut through with me. Otherwise, then you're one of the many who are saying the same thing. You're making a eco-friendly tissue paper. So what? What does that mean for me?
Yeah. No, great. Thanks, Nikhil. I think there is one more interesting question if we have time is, what do you think of the backlash Tinder is getting for its Pride Month campaign? And I think in many ways they were normalizing what you said, right? They were bringing it part of their app and said, you can choose your own sexual orientation and make it part of the app. But obviously they've got some praises and some backlashes.
Is this question for that, or is this question for the recent, I think, content piece that they've done with a musician? I think I'm not too sure about that. But if Priyanka has the answer for it.
Priyanka has not mentioned it, but I think
the one with Ritviz. Yeah, understood. I understood that. So yeah, I think great. See, sometimes there's a very beautiful line, very old line, which is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So if you have the right intention, doesn't matter. But if you're not executing it on point, people will hate on you. So, and I'm sure Tinder had the best intentions when they were doing that. But hey, you're creating a campaign for LGBTQIA people with not a single person from the community in that. There are so many musicians in this country from the community. You could have taken that and given them a platform versus falling into that trap of, Ritviz is a popular guy. I know this content will then see millions of views just because this person's popular. So let me use that. That is not, then you're not being true to your intention, I feel.
They're not acting. It's just an ad, like you said. Right?
Then it's an ad. And it could be a genuine oversight. I love the guys at Tinder. I know a lot of people at Tinder, great bunch of people, and it could be a genuine oversight. But that's what I mean, right? People are so sensitive about things today that you have to think thrice before you're going into, or before you're saying anything. I would have said 5 things in today's session which wouldn't have gone down with a lot of people, and that's my bad because I didn't understand sensibilities properly. So I feel like great intentions, but I think lost on execution. And
Okay.
Chaitanya's question also, just for 1 minute. What is your opinion? Brands taking ticket opinions completely depends on what your brand is. I feel as a leader brand, usually you don't want to do that because you don't want to project a challenger almost approach. When I was at Micromax working with the Micromax team, we used to take a dig at every other brand because that was fun, and we were a challenger, so that was the only way we could have kind of
got attention.
And I think it's the same thing with Burger King and McDonald's, right? There's always a fight with who's the leader. But I personally love Burger King. I think some of their campaigns are just amazing, even though they keep taking digs at each other. But I think it's now become fun also. I think it's a fun rivalry. It's not really, I don't think it's bad mouthing each other. It's always about, hey, who's gonna up the next person? It's almost like two best friends taking digs
I can see some fans of Burger Kings in the chat here. So yeah, I think no, absolutely. Great. I think there are a lot more questions, Nikhil, and I think I had a lot more questions as well, but I think unfortunately we're out of time. But thanks so much for spending the time. Would love to hear some closing thoughts from you, and thanks again for being here with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first up, thank you, Vikas, for having me over. Again, I'm going to reiterate my thank yous to every single person. I see there are 133 people. So, oh my God, this is just amazing to see that there are so many people who've taken the time out in the middle of a work week when something so big is happening in India. So really, really thankful, really grateful. Thank you for the questions. I think some very hard questions. I don't know if I was able to answer them correctly, but just my opinions, and opinions are free, so I'll give them. But very happy to be here. I'd love to do this again. And if for the people who I couldn't answer questions, please feel free to either send them to Vikas. He can send them my way, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. But thanks for being here. You guys have been amazing.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. I've just left the link as well for the feedback. It would be great to get your inputs and how the session went. And a big thank you to Nikhil for joining us today and spending the time with us. And look forward to interacting with all of you. I think if you still have questions, feel free to reach out to our team. We'll find a way to make that connection happen. Thanks once again, and thanks everyone for attending. And now probably you can go and see what our Prime Minister has told the country. And
and stay safe, everyone. Please be inside.
Absolutely. Stay safe. Have a great week ahead. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nikhil.